Have you ever wondered if there was another warrior out there that had the same code that is similar to that of the Knights of England? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is, and that is the samurai and their code called Bushido. There are many similarities between these two warriors and their codes, even though they're two different cultures, being 3 points that make a majority of them. The first one being the training that they went through together, the responsibilities they had to their lords and masters and the code that they followed, and last is the conduct and how they presented themselves in battle or on the home front. We begin with the training that the knight and the samurai went through. The training that these young men went through began at the age of 7, usually younger, and it required that they followed educational tactics of military being, understanding their religion, and also understanding education that was presented at the time. We have an example that I can use, which is that of the squire, which was a young lad who began at the age usually of 7 or 8, who began to follow a knight around. At that time, he was responsible for taking care of the knight's gear, weapons, horses, and as he did so, he learned and trained to become a knight. As he grew older in his teens, he would eventually understand more military tactics and how to fight. The same is said with the samurai. At the young age of 5 or 6, a young boy had to be required to train to become a samurai. He understood education, calligraphy, Chinese poetry, as well as military tactics of their time. An example of their training that is similar in some retrospects is the fact that they understood swordsmanship, but also practicing horsemanship, riding horseback. As you can see on the right, this is an example of jousting, which is still shown today, and which required that 2 knights ride on horseback with their skills and to use the poles that you see here to joust one another off their horse and to earn points. If a knight failed at this jousting, he would lose his horse and his armor. In this sense, it was allowed to help train the horsemen to use a weapon called the lance when he went on the battlefield when he was on horseback. However, the same can be said of the samurai with their horsemanship training, which required them to ride on horseback, but also using archery. They had also used lances in the same retrospect, but it was more archery for them and the samurai. Another example is the swordsmanship, as I said before, and the jousting is kind of similar to what the samurai did, which was a sign of a tournament, which was fighting each other, which was called the Ronin, which was a samurai who didn't have a master to serve, but would duel other samurai to see which one was the strongest. In a sense, during peacetime, they would fight one another to see which was better and to keep practicing. Next, we have the responsibilities that the knight and samurai had to serve. The name samurai means to serve, and in this case, the samurai was loyal and had to pledge his allegiance to a young lord of Japan, depending on which province they lived in. The knight, on the other hand, did the same thing. The Knights of England had to worship their king or queen by serving loyally and to take an oath to defend and to die for them and his people. They also had to present an aura of power, which can be seen by the warriors of these cultures. The knight would wear his armor, which we have seen many times in museums all across the world, and the same is also the samurai with their lacquer plate armor. They had to present themselves accordingly to be respectful and to be clean and dignified when they were ready to fight or to meet another person. They had to portray great manners to being their peasants or to the higher class. We see many examples in how knights would be respectful to young ladies at tournaments, bowing to their lords or the queens. And the same is said with Japan's samurai when they would bow to the generals or to other peasants or other people. They would be respectful to one another. They also had, as I said before, to defend their lord and their king and queen. They also had to deal with the training, as I said, on the battlefield. They had to be respectful and dignified on the battlefield and to fight for their lord and their queen's beliefs. By doing so, they have many similarities that these two follow in their codes. We begin at the last part being conduct. The samurai and the knight had to share great conduct in what they did in their service. The samurai had to be respectful, as I said, to one another, and the knights did the same way in times of war, or even in peace, when they would wear their armor, they would lift up their helmets to show to the other warriors and to show a sign of respect when they talked and greeted one another. The knights also had a code which is similar to Bushido in the samurai's ways, called chivalry, which was followed by England and France at the time, which said if a knight surrendered by lifting his hand and his gauntlet as he wore, he would be surrendering and be respectfully not harmed, but held hostage until he was able to pay back his ransom to return to his country. The samurai had the same code by doing so in the same way. By if a samurai dishonorably did something wrong, he's allowed to re-earn his honor by doing what the code has stated that they should follow. The knight and the samurai have something another that is also similar to that. They also dressed in proper clothing. As you see on the left here, the samurai dressed in his normal attire, carrying the two double swords, the katana, which is signified for the warriors that they are. The knights, dressed in their clothing with their armor, as you can see, are wearing or bowing to the lady, being even if she's the queen, princess, or even just the normal farmer worker, they were respectful to lords and ladies of the time. This shows that these men and their codes are also similar in another fashion. I also read a text here from a book called The Code of the Samurai, which I have presented by Thomas Cleary, which states, whether you're walking, standing still, sitting down, or reclining, in your conduct and manner, you carry yourself in a way that exemplifies a genuine warrior. These strong words say and show that a samurai, the knight of his time, was responsible for the way he sat, ate, speak, or even dressed. And the same can be said with the knight in the way they had to present themselves, making them also similar. In conclusion, we have learned that the code these two warriors have followed are the same by the training that these men have undertaken, the responsibilities they had to follow, but also, and last but not least, is the conduct they had to present themselves in when they was serving. So the next time you visit a museum and see these men's suits of armor, think of how they are very similar, yet unique to their two cultures. Thank you.